Recently on Twitter, I was, dare I say, brave enough to predict that 1 year from now, the Degen Ape Academy will have the largest market cap in all of Solana NFTs. Now, this video is going to be centered largely on why I believe that to be the case. Before we get into it, of course, there is the disclosure that nothing in this video is financial advice. I'm just an average Joe off the street talking with one of my friends about something that I'm very passionate about. That friend is the Saint Eclectic, a user that has been in the Solana NFT space really since the very beginning, since the Degen Apes minted and put Solana NFTs on the map. So get ready to hear about what's been going on with the Degen Ape Academy. What is the culture? What is the brand? Where is this project going? And why do we believe so strongly that the metaverse is going to embrace the Degen Apes as big as it possibly can? This video is packed with a whole lot of information, and I'd really encourage you to watch it all the way through to the end. Beyond that, it's more like a podcast. So if you're driving in your car, don't worry, you don't need to see the screen. Just listen, because two very passionate people, are about to have a deep discussion, not only about the project, Degen Ape Academy, but also the Solana NFT ecosystem itself. And ultimately, the goal is that we are all going to make it together. Let's go. All right, I am sitting down with the Saint Eclectic from Twitter. You've seen him on Twitter. I know you've seen him on Twitter because he's a very well-known presence, especially with the OGs. Now, the Saint Eclectic, I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit, but I just want to tell you personally, like, I've been following you for a long time. You make these super in-depth, very analytical, very calculated threads on the Solana NFT space in general. It's not just the Degen Apes, which is what we're here to talk about. But you've been around for a minute, and you've been very, very well ingrained into the Solana space. Tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got into Solana NFTs.
Well, thank you for having me on your show, Knox. I mean, first of all, really pleased and excited to be here. I love your content and thrilled to share a little bit about myself and the Degen Apes. But, maybe starting with me, you say I've been around for a long time. The funny thing is that Solana hasn't really all been around for all that long, especially with the NFT scene, right? If anything, it kind of kicked off in August with Degen Apes and a whole host of different projects. But for me, I started experimenting very early. I was obsessed with crypto when I first got into it, which was only a year ago, but it moved very quickly from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Solana, and actually using the protocols to see, what makes sense, what can I do on it? And, I was attracted to Solana because it was cheap, it was easy, it was fast. And over time, what I noticed was that the Solana community is just a community that's full of enthusiasm. People are very welcoming, right? And it was very easy to engage with people on Twitter. Up until then, I'd never really tweeted much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so from those conversations, what happened was that I started to realize that there were many people out there that shared passions about NFTs, right? About the Solana ecosystem. And from there, I started thinking, well, I've got some opinions. I've been around a little while now. I've seen some things that I like, some things that I find a little bit odd. What if I have a look at some of those observations, do a bit of digging on data, and see if I could write interesting articles? It comes from a place of passion, right? And so I'm able to write threads on that. And some of the threads that I've written, have been about the NFTs in the space, some imitation projects that came over from ETH to Solana. Also looking at sort of, how to spot cash grab projects and how to avoid that. And then more recently, the themes that we've seen around royalties in NFTs and how they impact projects. So, that's a little bit of a quick recap, I guess, in terms of how I came into the space and how I ended up starting to write threads.
I think that's really good that you're able to take a passion and channel it, much the same way that I take my passion and sit behind a camera and just kind of blurt into the microphone for an hour or so. But it's cool that this entire space brings people with different skill sets and different ways to channel their passion, and give back to the community in specific ways. I want to touch on something you just said that I thought was interesting. the Solana NFT space, you're right. We keep saying we're so early. It's because it's in its infancy. It's like literally in its infancy. It's only 2 months old. And I agree with you that what really put Solana NFTs on the map was kind of very ironically the Degen Ape launch, because if you remember, it was a very memorable but at the same time very forgettable launch that took a few days to get it down right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think people sometimes forget, it's only been 2 months, but back then it was the Wild West, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was no candy machine by Jordan and Bell and the other guys there. There was just no candy machine. There was no infrastructure put in place. It was really hard. Sorry, it was Jordan and Bartosz.
Yeah.
And no one had really worked out how to launch things properly, let alone projects where tens of thousands of people were starting to try and click and mint at one time. I think you had sort of Solpunk, Solarians launch, not much fanfare there, but Degen Apes was the one that really had a lot of marketing, a lot of really unique 3D art, and a lot of good hype. I don't like to use the word hype, but there definitely was a lot of interest in the project.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I actually remember the monkey launch was, I mean, just a few days before that. And even its rollout was interesting. I think we paid to mint, and then we had to wait for them like a half an hour to an hour, it felt like, to actually produce the monkeys and then deliver them. And I remember I had to jump in the Discord and say, hey, here's my wallet address. I never got anything, and they were still working on it. So even the monkey rollout, while it it happened that day, it was still like we're building this plane in the air. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I missed the monkey rollout, but I remember when the top monkey sold for $2 million not so long ago, and literally someone said, "Hey, it was only 2 months ago that we were in Discord, and you went to bed having sent your Solana, and you wake up the next day hoping that you'd get a monkey, right?" Yep. To go from thinking that you might be rugged to someone selling the top monkey for $2 million. Wow. In 2 months, what a wild trip.
I know. It is wild. But I mean, the same token, I remember within the first few weeks, really, of Degen Apes being live, when Moonrock bought the zombie. It was like a rank 16 or 18 zombie, and they paid, I can't remember, 1.2 or 1.3 million at the time for that zombie. So, Solana NFTs, in a very short amount of time, have come an extraordinarily long way. And again, I like to think that one of the things that really brought a lot of attention, a lot of people get confused as to where we are today, where the monkeys have the dominant market cap. But 2 months ago, when Solana NFTs were getting started, the thing that caught people's eye was the Degen Apes. And transitioning this conversation a little bit, one of the things that really caught people's eye about the Degen Apes wasn't necessarily the artwork. It was the ethos, the brand, how they tweeted. Let's talk about what this means to the community of the Degen Apes. How is the community today? What is the brand? What is the spirit of the Degen Apes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I mean, the art's fantastic, right? I often say Monolith's 3D art is sort of the base, of the canvas of the painting. But the painting is really the community. It's how people engage with the project. It's how people act, right? I mean, that's what PFP's profile pictures do to us. We put a monkey on, and suddenly, a little bit of an interesting persona comes out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the culture really for Degenerate Apes is really in the name itself, right? Yep. They're degenerate apes. They're people that are passionate about things. They're fun-loving. They love to ape into any sort of topic with unbridled enthusiasm, I suppose. It could be minting, it could be investing in crypto, but while they're doing it, they're going to have a lot of fun. They're going to poke fun at each other and not get too serious about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, and to kind of talk about that a little bit, there are people in really every community that do get pretty serious about it. And mm-hmm. I think one of the interesting things about that is, at first, there were a lot of people who took it very, very seriously, and we've started to kind of see the culture evolve a little bit. You know what I mean? In my opinion, from the outside, well, I'm not an outsider. I am an ape holder. I am an enthusiastic ape holder, and I think this week mm-hmm. I've started to reveal that The project that I'm most bullish on long term in all of Solana is the Degen Apes, and I believe that.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that I have become most bullish on this is that in recent history, I'm seeing the community start to engage with other communities in more positive lights. Now, you're still going to run into anybody. Like, there's always going to be someone in your group, whether it's Degen Apes, Thudbirds, Monkeys, or whatever, that has a strong opinion, right? But for the most
Mhm.
part, I'm seeing the Degen Apes doing things outside of themselves more. What is your perspective on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when the Degen Ape started, the failed mint caused a couple of issues, right? So, there were a couple of tokens that, had concerns about whether they'd be included into the collection or not. And some people were upset about that, and rightfully so, right? Because, when you get the chance to mint something, it gets taken back on you. That doesn't create a great feeling, right?
No.
Now, that's been mostly worked upon, right? And we sort of sorted through that. But I think what's really changed over time, after dealing with that issue, is also the fact that people have started to take more sort of responsibility and found sort of a brothership, a sisterhood, like, brethren with fellow apes. And that took a little time to sort of flesh out. And part of this reason is because once the Degen Apes launched, there's a little bit of chaos, but then there were about, who knows, hundreds and thousands of other projects, right, that started launching in terms of NFTs. And so there was a lot of your attention was stretched across many things. But then as we saw the sort of bear market, if you will, sort of happen, and a lot of the value of NFTs dropped, and what you saw was a lot of the low effort projects tended to sort of fade away a little
Mhm.
bit, and people gravitated back towards the blue chips, right?
Mhm.
You'll see with Degen Apes, if we really need to talk about flaws, but the flaws had always held around the 60 sol zone, right?
Mhm.
I think it dipped recently as sol's price went up, but it never came anywhere close to mint, which was, I think, around 5 or 6 sol, if I recall correctly, right?
When Soul was much cheaper back then.
That's true.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so what happened is that as people gravitate back towards the blue chips, right, they start to re-engage with one another. They start to make connections, right? And what we've seen also is that over time, the team had put together what we call the student council, right? It's the makings or the beginnings of a DAO. I wouldn't say it's a DAO because it's somewhat centralized amongst 15 individuals who were voted in and represent the entire community, right? But that was a pivotal moment because they were able to move forward and make decisions for the community on a couple of hairy subjects, such as the failed mint that I mentioned before earlier. But they were also able to start putting in place initiatives for the community, right? Because they weren't focused on building the project like the dev team was, right?
Right.
And I'm lucky to be one of these members, and one of the things that really stood out was one of our apes is called McDegens, or Degen Service, right? And he created, he was so passionate about these apes with a McDonald's uniform that he created a little subgroup called McDegens.
Mhm.
And it became its own Discord with a really passionate community that was sharing alpha, what to mint, how to look at things. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, that is an amazing model. We need to sort of encourage more of these subgroups. And from that, people coming back and people doing things together, new subgroups have formed. We've got Degen Divas celebrating some of the female traits, right? The pink dresses, the bow ties on the head, the sun hat, the maid's dresses as well. We've got endangered apes, where you've got apes in leopard skins and ice skins trying to do silly things for climate change, and a whole host of other ones. You've even got a Degen Ape Mafia, where they sort of put tattoos on your ape for free, right? And now people are starting to do things for each other, do things together, right?
Yep.
And sort of coinciding with these subgroups is also the sub channels within the Degen Ape Discord, right? And that's a lot of what we've been pushing over time. In fact, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't call these guys out, but we have a channel in there called Mint Squad, right? And that's home to some of the wildest Degen apes who love to just jump into every mint. They love to dive into the deep end. The motto is pretty much get rich or get wrecked together, because no one deserves to get rugged alone, right? So it's created a real culture of fun. And that was something that took a little bit of time to build. It was a little bit sort of fragmented at the start, but now it's coming together really well.
I can testify to that because I'm in the Endangered Apes. I have one of the Leo apes, and I think they're in Scotland right now for the climate change conference, the summit that's happening for all of the international leaders that are happening. It's kind of fascinating that these subgroups are more than just a Discord membership. You know, I think that's one of the things that people often really forget what they're buying when it comes to an NFT. You know, at first, you're buying a JPEG and a Discord membership. That's what it is. But the projects that actually build, there's going to be a community evolution aspect to it, which is what you just talked about, with the subgroups that are evolving, like the Degen Divas, the Endangered Apes, the Mafia. And those subgroups have their own unique mission that they actually carry out. When I think about the Endangered Apes, someone is literally getting on a plane or a train or in their car, and they're actually driving to these real-world events to participate and represent the community at those things. And that's a big deal. That's pretty fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think we all come from different walks of life, right? You know, there's professionals, there's people that play poker, there's people that work as environmental consultants. You know, and Solly, which is one of our key endangered apes, who's got, you know, an ice ape. In actual fact, he didn't have one, and he went out and bought one to represent endangered apes. And now he's at COP26, you know, hanging out with Boris Johnson and all those folk at the climate conference, right? Making memes. He's taking photos. He's sending them back to us. He's like, well, can someone help me Photoshop, you know, some of us in here, because this is a great photo that I took. So, you know, these things take time. You know, they're gradual, right? You know, and what we want to be able to do is empower the community to be able to do things like this, but then also potentially one day use DAO funds or something like that to go ahead and support sustainable causes, right?
Okay. Yeah. Keep going. I was listening.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the other thing I'll say, like, you know, you mentioned a couple of the groups there. Another one that I haven't mentioned is Degen Artist Management, and this one caught me by surprise. Okay. Someone messaged me on Discord out of the blue. He had a very interesting name. It was Luscious Buns, and he said to me, "Hey, listen, I want you to listen to this, right?" And he sends me a clip, and it was like a Tom Jones song. You know, it was like Tom Jones singing, right? And I was like, "What is this, right? Like, why are you sending me a song?" And it's actually a song that they wrote and produced in a studio, and it was called "The Floor Ain't No Place for a Lady," right? Trying to encourage people not to leave the Degen Divas close to the floor in terms of floor price.
Yep.
And I was just stunned at the fact that, you know, guys were out there producing content on their own volition, right? And now those guys are producing videos for the endangered apes, for other different subgroups in the community. I mean, they're all subgroups, but we're all really part of one big family. Yeah. And so, you know, that content element is really exciting to me as well. And here's the other element of it: the dev team, who are, you know, working away and building the project, as well as the Degen Trash Pandas. They put together a contest. It's called Create. You know, if you go on Twitter, you can have a look at it. #CREAPE. And people have been submitting some fantastic things, you know, Photoshops, videos, audios, sort of samples about the Degen Ape Academy. Some of them are hilarious. Some of them are just absolutely demented. But for what it shows is the pool of talent that's in this community, and inspired by the art, inspired by each other to really go for it. There is a prize, of course, that they win, but that's a weekly prize. And from there, we were able to find guys that could fit into the Degen Artist Management and then help other parts of the community.
What is the prize? A juicy prize? Is it something you can share?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a secret, you know. So the funny thing is that the team have been wanting to update the website for a while, right? And they've been pretty slow about it. So to light a fire under their proverbial behinds, every week up until they finally complete the website, there's going to be this Create contest. And then people submit this stuff in, and the best one gets selected. And the winner gets a Degen Ape NFT.
Nice.
And
That's not a
they don't
small
just
value.
no, no. Here's the thing, Knox. It's not only a normal Degen ape, but it's a Degen ape that is a twin, right?
Oh.
And if you know the background of the twins, is that some of the metadata is a little bit funny, and I think they're looking into breeding mechanics for the twins. So it's while it's all sort of a little up in the air and somewhat speculative as to the value of them, I think it's relatively safe to say that there is more value in the twins than a simple Degen ape token.
Okay.
And some of these things are trading at upwards of 100 sol right now, if you try to find one.
Wow. Okay. So that's a very significant. I mean, 100 sold today is $23,000. Like, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we touched on a lot of things in that last string right there. That there's a lot that I want to go into. One of the first ones, I got like 3 things in my mind right now that I want to make sure we touch on after that. One of the first things that I want to touch on is I recently joined a space that was hosted by the Degen Apes. I think it was a Degen DAOO space, but very fascinating. It had nothing to do with the Degen Apes at all. It was a project spotlight that was actually focused on Bone World. So tell me about this. Is kind of interesting to me where traditionally all projects host spaces to promote their own brand and talk about themselves. In this case, it wasn't. What's that? What's the idea there?
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up, because this is another one of the initiatives that we've been trying to push as the council, right? And what that is giving back to the apes. So we do that through collaborating and partnering with other promising NFT projects out there, right? A lot of them will want some attention because they're launching, and they want a little bit of eyes on their project, and so they'll get in touch with us, and then we will vet them, right? Now, at the end of the day, it's not an endorsement necessarily of the project, though we do vet them very carefully, right? And many times we're only comfortable doing that if they are sort of founders that we know, that maybe they're Degen Apes themselves, right? And then what they do sometimes is they give us NFT tokens, and we run competitions to give it to our fellow Degen Apes, right, in the community, because we want to really build that bond. We want people coming back and seeing that, hey, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, right? And you stand a chance to win one of these NFTs. So that's actually a concerted effort to try and connect with other NFT projects, and then also at the same time reward our Degen Ape community, right? Now, why did that space come up? Well, because it's no good just giving away things, right, to your community, right? What I want to do is instill some sort of understanding and learning of the other projects, because you can run giveaways all the time. People just click like, click retweet, and just hope they win, right? But the more interesting thing is learning about that project. The more interesting thing is thinking, could we do something in the future together? And so that's why we hosted some of these spaces which had project spotlights. The Bonewell one that you spoke about in particular, I think that was run by Degen Service and another one of our Degen Apes called Samatoli. That's an interesting one, because Samatoli is also trying to pull together his own subgroup called Alpha Hour. And that one is somewhat similar to Mint Squad, but he's approaching it from an angle of actually speaking to the project and trying to negotiate, even better kind of rewards, right?
Actually researching instead of just barreling in.
Exactly. So it's similar to Mint Squad, but completely opposite in terms of aping ethos, right?
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad. I'm glad that you got that space. If you were able to tune into some of the other ones, you would have seen a showcase of another three or four projects, such as Spaceheads by Pablo Correa, and that guy is one of our Degen Apes as well. And the reason why we really want to support him and his project, he's a guy from Uruguay, right? Not many people know about that country, but they are an incredibly tech-enabled country. I did the research. I wrote a thread on it somewhere out there. But the reason why it's so great was that for the community, there's a lot of sports fans out there, right? And we're like, wouldn't it be cool if our Degen Ape had, our sports team on it, right? For me, I'm a Chelsea fan. I love my soccer. So he just went out and put jerseys onto our apes and sent it to us for free.
Oh,
right?
he's the guy who's doing that. I saw the Dallas Cowboys one. That was really cool.
Yeah. So all manners of football teams across all kind of countries, whatever you call football or what I call hand egg and or soccer, that sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. I've seen those customs before. That's really cool work. I
And that's
think
all community. That's all community led and made.
it is. And I mean, for me, like I'll be honest, I didn't do my research or due diligence on Bone World. I didn't know anything about it. And now, next thing I know, I'm shopping for Bone World. And
Mhm.
it was because of the Degen Ape space that it was, I think it was called Project Spotlight Bone World. And it literally caught me off guard that the Degen Apes were hosting a Project Spotlight on other projects. And that's what made me jump in and listen. And sure enough, it was the actual artist from Bone World talking about their development efforts, talking about how he actually built the layers and what went into it and what the future holds. And I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting. This guy's really talented and the community's really strong. So I'm going to go thumb through, their Magic Eden listings. And I thought that was really, really fascinating that that happened. So
Mhm.
that was one thing I wanted to make sure we touched on.
Yeah, look, I think the interesting thing about crypto is that it's a very tribal kind of thing, right? You
Yeah.
have BTC maxis, and then when I was studying Ethereum, BTC maxis weren't very nice to Ethereum people. And what I found funny is that Ethereum, guys are now maybe not so nice to some of the Solana folk, right? So it's all very tribal, but at the end of the day, we're all on one team, right?
Yeah.
And that applies, times 10 when it comes to NFTs. And so very early on, I think, as you said, all communities will have certain individuals that don't represent, what we really should be. And so sometimes you'll see that tribal kind of thing come out, like, people might make a tweet about a different project, people might say some good or bad things. But I think what's important now is that by us working with different projects, by us showcasing some really cool stuff out there that some of our apes would really love,
Yep.
we move away from that, right? We're all tribal in some ways, for sure, by the PFP that we represent, but there's a greater good here, and we can all sort of a rising tide will lift all of our boats,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I want to follow that up and say, like, this is what you're talking about right now is what really makes NFTs different from any other investment vehicle. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets tribal when they talk about price predictions for JP Morgan stock versus Facebook stock 1 year from now. Nobody. Nobody is emotionally invested in a stock portfolio. But you talk about Degen apes versus monkeys. Look what happened to me yesterday. I got crucified by the monkeys. And that's because people have an emotional attachment to their NFTs. People really believe that, I am my JPEG and my JPEG is me. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
this is why, again, we keep saying we're so early. And this is why we're so bullish on NFTs, because once this becomes truly mainstream, once these mega corporations like Facebook, now Meta, and all of these, and Nike, once they actually get into building a metaverse, all of that emotionality and emotional feelings towards an NFT hits the average consumer.
Mhm.
And they all are just going to gobble these things up. These are going to be the new form of luxury in the
Oh,
real
yeah,
world. And,
absolutely. I mean, I agree with you so much. Sorry, I cut you.
no, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, like you even heard that McDonald's is launching an NFT, which
Yep.
is quite funny. Everyone's doing it, right? Visa bought a CryptoPunk.
Yep.
I didn't get it. I have to be honest with you, Knox. Like, I didn't get NFTs to begin with, right? Like when Bored Ape came around, I was like, what is this? Like why would you pay money for a JPEG? I totally did not get it. I was the biggest skeptic in the world, right?
Yep.
Fast forward later, like half my portfolio of is NFTs. And, I only truly got it after I bought my first NFT. And then after I minted my Degen Ape. And I was like, I kind of like these, they kind of represent my identity. And then the community aspect started coming out. Suddenly I was tweeting people and people were tweeting me. I've had my Twitter account since 2009. I haven't even used it, right? And suddenly, like, it's become the thing that's draining my battery the most on my iPhone,
Yeah.
right? And that's the power of NFTs. Like, I totally hear what you're saying. I just got completely sucked in. And you definitely see the benefit and power that they have. They're cultural. They're going to be the zeitgeist. They are the zeitgeist now, right? It's just what's going to come down the pipe. And as you said, once the masses sort of get it, I kind of feel it's what's going to onboard the next 100 million people into crypto.
Yep.
Right?
So I want to kind of stress on something. You mentioned that you didn't really use Twitter, you didn't get NFTs. Now you get both. You're in big, but you made a choice as to which one is actually going to represent you. Your profile picture is a Degen Ape. Do you own more NFT projects outside of Degen Apes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, if anyone knows me, I am, how would I say this? Like, I'm an NFT maximalist.
Okay.
I'm against sort of toxic tribalism. I love all projects, right? As long as they have a real team that's building value and not sort of rent seeking and sort of being a cash grab,
Uh
right?
huh.
I've invested in Degen Apes, Thugbirds. I was there from day one. I missed Solana Monkey business, but I absolutely have some of them because I really enjoy interacting with the community. In fact, some of the first threads that I wrote, I needed to collaborate with people like Milst and Hoke
Uh huh.
to get some technical information on reading the Solana blockchain to see what I could examine about certain auction sites and that sort of thing.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed the interaction that I got, so I went out and got Bunky. Right now, what do I want to choose as my profile pic? That one's a tricky one, right? Like, because I love them all and I can't pick all of them. And maybe Degen Ape sort of gets the tick because they were one of the first that I had, right? I will also say that I have a Bored Ape, and I use that for a long time as well to try and sort of get to know the community better. But if I'm being fully honest with myself, as you can see from the threads and what I focus on, like it's really the Solana community that I seem to click with a little bit more easily, and so that's why it's a Solana PFP. Why it's a Degen Ape? Because it's one of the earliest ones that I've got. I so many times I've been switching between that and wanting to put a Thugbird up there because I love Thugbirds, right? They came from a very sort of difficult launch, like monkeys, like apes.
Mm-hmm.
They had more people mint than birds than they really should have. The launch failed a couple of times, but then they really pressed the community angle of it. 0x Thug, the guy who founded it, did all the right things. He donated to charity, right? And there's just so much like rabid positive energy, right, with the Thugbirds, that I love them as well. So for me, it's super hard for me to choose any one of them. I love them all. I really do.
I think what you mentioned right there is one of the reasons why I actually bought a Vox chain. If you're familiar with that project that's just rolling out, they're custom made gold chains
Oh
of
yeah.
your Boogle, SMB, or Thugbird. And then they
Hmm.
actually have a channel in their Discord where they will Photoshop that chain on a PFP of your choice. So I actually have my Degen Ape wearing a gold chain of my SMB. And
Wow,
it's a way I could get both in one.
that's amazing. I might actually go look that up now. Before I was playing around with Photoshop, trying to fit two apes or an ape and this and that into a picture, and it's a little bit tricky sometimes. So I definitely want to look that up.
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. They're custom made, so they're not like generative or anything like that. It's really, and they're very scarce. They're very limited. I think there's only like 500 of them. So, anyways, like I hopped on that the first chance I got, and I very much enjoy looking at that. Anyways, yeah. So I mean, I totally vibe with everything you're saying right now. Everything you're saying feels like all the things that I've wanted to say for a long time, and haven't really been able to express it in the right ways. I think the biggest thing that I've seen in recent history is the breakdown of tribalism. And I think it's in large part led by you, within multiple communities, not just Degen Apes, but there's been a breakdown in tribalism. I think October was so rough on NFTs in general that we all kind of realized we need to come together as a community so that
Hmm.
we know we're all going to make it. We just got to wait to ride this out. And then like literally in the last 48 hours things have started to pick back up again, and it's the spirit is very very high right now, which is so exciting.
I love it. I love it, Knox. I honestly have to say, I think you're right. I think in October, we just got the stuffing knocked out of us. And in some ways, there's a lot of camaraderie with that too, right? It's like lost porn. It's like,
Yeah,
hey, man, like, we're all suffering. Like, let's just get along, right?
yeah,
And, half of us have been rugged on projects as well. I mean, I've been rugged on so many. But, it's a rite of passage.
yeah.
And whether you're repping an ape, a gecko, a thugbird, a Solana monkey business, we've all been through that, right?
Yep.
And I, for one, like, like I just love the cross pollination of communities, and people just being able to get along with each other. Right? You're never going to agree on everything, but we win together, as you
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about where the Degen Apes are going next. Recently, Monolith tweeted something that made me like stop mid breath. It made me like take a pause back. I had to sit back and think about it. He tweeted something, to paraphrase it. It was to the effect of, like, we're not just building an NFT project, we're building a brand. And to me, that made me think so much about what makes an NFT successful. And everybody looks to Bored Apes, right? Everybody's watching, the Bored Apes in New York right now, private parties, 3-story yachts. What's the thing that makes me, what is the thing that drives people to be the most jealous about Bored Apes, in my opinion, is when the Bored Ape Yacht Club Twitter account retweets one of their holders. And the tweet was to the effect of, hey, went for a jog in my hoodie, ran into another Bored Ape out in the wild, and we took a little selfie together. Here we are. We've now transcended 140 character tweets to actual physical communications, real world bonds and camaraderies. So when I start thinking about when Monolith is talking about we're building a brand, to me, I'm thinking about a brand as something that's a household name. It's something that's recognizable out in the physical world when I'm shopping for groceries or filling up gas. Tell me what your perspective about this is and how the Degen Apes are doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point you raise. I think, we always talk about community being sort of the core building block of an NFT. And that's true, because without a community, you don't spread the word. You don't get decent price action, and you don't get engagement from people who are not NFT lovers, right? That want to come in after that. But beyond community, there's got to be the brand, right? And the brand can mean many things. It can mean that you're really good at working together with each other. You're great at building things. You're good at creating initiatives. You're great at being inclusive, right? But then there's also other aspects, right? So does your project provide utility? Is there a game? Does it provide sort of merchandise, that sort of thing? And then how does it transcend into the real world, right? With Bored Apes, you saw that Ape Fest, and where everyone was heading out and stuff like that. And one of the things that is great about that is that when we all can travel again after all this sort of COVID and reopening, I really want to go out and fly and meet my Thugbirds, my Degen Apes, right? I can't wait to do that, right? And part of that brand building is that the community that it starts with.
And immediately what pops in my head is what could be more on brand than Degen Ape Fest New Orleans. Like, that would be so insane and hilarious. Or Degen Ape Fest Las Vegas, like just cities that are designed for degeneracy. And
absolutely. Miami, New York's pretty bad, Hong Kong, and we even have a subgroup in Hong Kong, right? There's a tweet out there where they printed out Degen Apes. They're lined all over a wall in a bar.
I saw that. That's fascinating to me. We're talking about transcending digital life into physical life, and here I saw that there was a Hong Kong meetup for Degen Apes where they had physical prints all over the wall of the Degen Apes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, right. And it was at a bar. It was pretty cool. I can't wait to do that once things open up where I am in this part of the world, and certainly, hopefully, even fly to different countries where we could do something similar. There is something about the art, Knox, right? There's something about the art and the traits that you see. You've got an ape drinking glue. It's so ridiculous. You have an ape eating crayons, right? It's very sort of, it makes fun of itself. We're just not that serious. We're just a little bit crazy. And that it evokes something in people, right? Yep. It gets people going, as they say, right?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And this is why I was literally pondering it last night about what is it about the Degen Apes that makes Monolith a genius. And it's not that he's a talented artist and drew funny apes and raccoons for that matter. It's that he actually encompassed a spirit, a ethos, a mentality in his artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And
you see that also spill out in the Twitter account, right? The Degen Ape one is probably one of the funniest Twitter accounts I've ever seen. Just riffing on people, ribbing each other, making fun of itself half the time.
Yep.
And you're right, that captures the ethos of just not being too serious and having fun.
Yeah. Not to put words in someone's mouth, but I was asking them about what is the culture of Degen Apes recently, and it was a long response. But the thing that the phrase that caught my attention the most was, "Sure, we're blunt, but at the end of the day, we're all good fucking people."
Yeah, that sums it up.
Yeah.
Some are more blunt than others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But definitely that's the vibe. And part of being blunt is that we just have high conviction in what we do, even if we end up losing money or doing very silly things. We do it together.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, as you said, that's what NFTs and communities are about. You mentioned the word brand before, and I want to sort of circle back to that.
Sure.
Right. When you said Monolith is building a brand, right? And think about the IP that's being built. It's not just the Degen Apes. There is a Degeniverse. There's a Degenerate Trash Pandas that are coming out. The same iconic art, and we have a couple of very pivotal devs that are working as part of that team. I probably can't say much other than that they're sort of the industry leading devs out there. And so when you have such great technical support on that team and you have such great art, you can really build a brand. You have a foundation, right? It's not just I'm minting and I'm raising Solana to line my pockets, right? I'm doing that, of course, but I'm also using some of that capital to reinvest back into the project. I create this great airdrop. We're going to build a website. We're going to give utility to holders of both apes as well as the pandas, right? And then we're going to have a blockchain-based activity and game, right? Now, game is always a very dirty word in NFT world. I've said this as much in my threads because it always seems like vaporware. People say that to kind of get people off their backs, right?
Yeah.
But from what I've seen and what I've heard, and the strength of these devs, I really can't wait to see what they come up with.
I mean, they put it front and center on the Degen Trash Panda website. I'm going to pull that up right now and kind of scroll down just a little bit. And I highlighted this on my YouTube video on Monday, the mechanics of having a trash panda and an ape together where one gives you the benefit of the other. And then if you hold both, you get unique rewards. That was fascinating in its own right. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. But then you take it a step forward, and now you've got this Trash with Friends game where it's a game that you have to progress through up till you get to a certain point when you won't be able to progress anymore unless you team up with other apes and trash pandas. That to me is mind-blowing. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, talk about bringing your community to the next level, right? People who want to engage in this game got to work together, right? I don't know the full details of it, so I can't sort of confirm or sort of deny what you're saying. But based on what I'm reading on the website, I see the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And what I like about that is that here you have what people like to call a blue chip or pioneer project, pioneering something even further. They took a little while to get to it, of course, because of the fact that they're building a proper organization with sort of a good legal structure underneath it, right? Doing things correctly, right? It's not just four guys in a basement coding, right? It took them a while to get there, but the fact that they're doing it, gives me confidence in the project, gives me confidence in the devs, in Mono, and all the other people there, right? And like you said, you haven't really seen much of this before. There might be elements from other different projects, such as, you earn a utility token that you can use in the universe, right? And, we've seen that maybe on Ethereum with Cyberkongs or something like that. You might see it being offered in some of the new projects that are coming up. But what gives me confidence is that this is taking time. It's being done in a considered fashion, right? And hopefully they execute, right? At the end of the day, investing in NFTs is still risky. They might not be able to execute to the best of their ability. But I personally am putting my conviction behind it based on what I see.
And this is why I felt brave enough yesterday to tweet out to the world that I believe the Degen Apes will be the #1 market cap in a year from now. It's because as people in the metaverse, normies in the metaverse, start to be attracted to NFTs and projects and how they represent themselves in the metaverse, they're going to look at all of these projects and then evaluate what their return is. What is their benefit for this? So when you look at market caps and you look at like, okay, well, we've got two big market caps here, and they're both going to trend upwards at a similar pace. They're both going to get the same basic return. At some point, the average investor, let's take my dad, for instance. My dad's going to go, well, I could buy XYZ NFT for $50,000, or I could buy XYZ NFT for $25,000. I expect both to give me a 1,000% return. But when I buy the cheaper one, as of right now, it's also going to entitle me to benefits like holding an ape gives me Trash Panda benefits. It's also going to entitle me to access to this game where I could potentially get panda tokens. And it's also going to give me access to brand and community and merchandise. No other project is doing that. No other. This is why the thing that I am most bullish on right now is teams that build. Teams that are providing stuff back to their community to give them some adventure, some action, a reason to team up with their community members and actually be involved. And this is why I think the Degen Apes, because of their history, because they put Solana NFTs on the map, because of their artwork and how it catches the eye and provides a culture, like you could immediately tell what the culture is, because of the ability to, like the incentive to hold one and really hold both, and because of the ability to play this game to earn tokens, and because of the ability to partner with my peers, and knowing what else is coming, and the fact that they're building this in such a legally structured way that makes this organization long-term relevant, how could I not put them as number one? It's not a competition. Like, this isn't saying that everybody else is going to lose. We're all going to make it together. But
yeah, look, I totally hear you on that, right? And that's why it's a large reason why I am involved in Degen Apes. I see the potential. I see what they're doing. I think it's geared towards a long-term investment. It's a long-term vision, and that's why I wanted to help on the community side of things, right? Because I feel like a little bit of work was needed there, and we had some really great people like Degen Service and a whole bunch of the other guys, but we needed to do a little bit of work there, right? And I think it's happening. It's working. People are being a lot more positive about it, right?
Yeah.
And so in my mind, it's similar to investing, right? Like things that are sort of new might give you a super rocket return, but they also dump, right? And have a lot of risk. So people gravitate towards blue chips, so to speak. I don't really like using the term too much, but what gives this project blue chip is, as you've touched on it before, number one, provenance, as well as the major project that launched NFTs pretty much on Solana's network. But also the attitude, the brand, that's something that is really hard to build, right? And it's got that in spades, right? And so that's what makes it, a top project. I won't say if I think it's going to be number one or two, but it's definitely, in my mind, it's got to be in the top three at least, right? And of course, I also agree with you. I don't care who's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? As long as we all win and we all win together. Because I love my, Solana monkey business. I love my Thugbirds. They excel at different things, right? And they might not be developing in certain areas, but they might be excelling in other areas. They provide a different value proposition.
Yep.
And for me, because I love NFTs so much, I want exposure to all of that. Maybe I'm too greedy, but I want exposure to all of that, and I'll probably put my hat in one or two of the projects that I feel have got the best promise and the best brand.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I am someone who holds a highly ranked monkey, rank 110 according to Moonrank. I hold 2 apes. I hold an Aurori. I hold a Thugbird that I bought this morning. I hold.
Welcome to the flock.
I know. Thank you. Thank you. I bought a nice one at that, a zombie with a chain and a teardrop tattoo.
Wow.
And then I bought. I hold 4 geckos. I've been outspoken about the geckos from day one, again, because they build.
The great team, right? Like, I mean, Geckos launched at a weird time. It was when the bear market was sort of happening, and like,
Hmm.
a lot of mints just started trading underwater.
Yep.
So I was lucky enough to mint them, and then I was stupid enough to sell them pretty early because I thought, okay, like this thing is at least trading above mint. It's time to get out, right? And then they went in 3x, right? So, unfortunately my time and attention can only be divided so far, and
Yeah.
I would have loved to have given them, more of that. But what they've delivered, sort of is shown in the price action, right?
Yep.
So builders will accrue value.
I couldn't agree more. And I, if anything, the Geckos have demonstrated that their team is extraordinarily competent. And when you invest in the Geckos, again, it's not just investing in a JPEG or even a community, which their community is phenomenal. They're rabid about their geckos, but really, what I think you're investing in when you invest in the geckos is the team's ability to innovate and deliver. And I feel strongly that the Degen Apes and the Geckos are the two best teams in Solana NFTs right now. Again, that's not to say other teams are bad. That's not to say that that's the only two that are going to be left standing. We're all going to make it together. But I think the best value risk return proposition is DAA and Geckos. That's just my
Yeah. I mean, I would say so, right? And those two projects have been smashed in terms of price action over the bear market as well.
totally.
So great risk reward. I mean, again, not financial advice, as we always love to
Yep.
say in crypto,
Yep.
but very good sort of risk reward. That one thing I'll touch on. You said that Gecko's team is good. They attracted a lot of controversy at one point
Yep.
because of the whole revenue sharing thing,
Yep.
right? They had said something to, I think, Alpha Art, the market, and a lot of people didn't like that. The price of Geckos suffered as a result.
Yep.
But I wrote a thread on this about why you have to be careful with revenue share, right? It's not like the SEC is going to kick your door down tomorrow, but you have to think about the legal implications, and what kind of risks it brings to the various exchanges out there, right? And it could be FTX, it could be other exchanges. And what I was impressed by, at least for the Gecko that I saw on the Gecko side, was that they're perhaps a little too conservative and a little bit, maybe aggressive on the lawyer front, but they at least stuck to their guns on that, right? About not committing to revenue share and being associated with an exchange on that front, right? And I think the good teams will sometimes take a hit on that. They might not do what's most popular and hip in the moment, at the expense, of losing a bit of momentum, because they want to build things right and they want to do things right. And I think you see a lot of that in Degen Apes, right?
I totally agree. Could not agree more. I think you actually summed it up as good as you could possibly say. I think as a business owner and someone who wants to build not a multi-million-dollar project, but someday a multi-billion-dollar project, you got to think big. And if you don't do this right up front, right now, and get it squared away in the most legitimate way possible, the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing, Knox, right? It's a little bit of a catch-22, because like there's going to be a community element, and they're like, hey, decentralization, we should be able to do what we want. You can't really tell us what to do. And I love that ethos too, right? But that's why, many times you have a bit of a separation between a dev team that has got legal obligations that they have to fulfill, right? But you also have a DAO or a community angle. You see it with Monkey DAO, right? With Solana Monkey Business, the dev team is quite separate from Monkey DAO, which is the community-run effort.
Yep.
You're going to start seeing that more with Degen Apes, right? So you have the Degenerate Apes Academy dev team, and then you have what we call the Degen DAO, right? And what that is that, I told you before, there were 15 of us that were elected to make decisions. So it was somewhat centralized. But, what a couple of us have been trying to do recently is to start opening it up more to community decisions, right? To make sure that we start voting on various different things. Now, that's a work in progress right now, but that's where we're moving to, actually. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about the Degen Ape Academy right now, is that they are building out the DAO. Well, we are building out the DAO, and the community is going to get more of a say in everything we do.
So if I'm understanding this right, and I want to be crystal clear about this, we've got the Degen Ape Academy, which is a dev and monolith run organization whose primary purpose is to develop the project and provide new utility and benefits, while there is also a DAO that is the community-driven organization that represents the Degen Ape Academy and provides community-driven initiatives.
Absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head.
So,
right? And
if I'm just for a second, if I'm going to contrast these together, we've got the Geckos, which are almost exclusively dev-driven. I'm not actually sure if they even have a DAO. Then we've got Monkey DAO, which is almost exclusively community-driven, also similar to like Meerkat Millionaires, where it's also 100% community-driven. The apes are kind of somewhere in the middle, where there is the dev central organization that is very focused on building the project, developing utility, and then there's an allocation of funds for the community to do their own initiatives.
Absolutely.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you ask me, Degen Apes is one of the strongest dev teams that are out there, right? I speak to them, sometimes, and I get a great impression from the way they work. Imagine, Knox, you have a strong dev team plus a really strong community that starts to run and do its things on its own, right? Now, I would say that DAA was maybe at the start a little bit more similar to Geckos, where it was mostly dev team driven. And then the interim step was the election of 15 of us, right? 15 apes to make decisions on tricky things, right, for the community. But I think where we're going, it's a vision I personally have, and I've been trying to sort of champion, right? Of course, there are a lot of apes that are doing the same thing too, right? Is that we move away from that slightly. You'll still probably always have, like, let's say, a council to act as a circuit breaker, right?
Yep.
Because you don't want the DAO to be doing too many, things that skirt the law or anything near that, right?
Yep.
But more sort of decisions and initiatives can be just community run, right? Like you want to propose donating to a certain charity, go ahead and do it. You want to build a bot, go ahead and do it. You want to run a marketing campaign. You want to go print out apes and walk down the street, right? Go and do it. We'll go allocate some funds to it. That's the vision that we have in terms of building Degen DAO. And, Knox, I always say this, right? Decentralization, in my view, in my opinion, it's a gradual process, right? It's a scale. It's not like I flip a switch and we're decentralized, right? I mean, like you even see this on ETH, to some extent, right? And so I think that the evolution of this DAO from first being dev-led, then dev-led plus 15-member council, then to, hey, community steps up and does more, but has guidance from the council is really, really critical. And then the advantage for DAA, right? And this is why I have such strong conviction in it. And of course, I love other projects too, don't get me wrong, but why I have strong conviction in DAA is because if you pair these two elements together, right? A killer dev team that is building, right, with a community, that is super strong and doing their own initiatives out there, that to me is the killer project that will make people want to be part of.
Could not agree more if I tried. And it's because at the end of the day, you do need a dev team as well as elected student council members to be decision makers. You do have to have strong leadership in order to guide the ship. There should be some form of democracy where people get to vote and choose things that are dear to their heart and speak their voices and have a say and an impact as to how we allocate funds and how we do things. But I do believe that especially given the leadership that the team has already shown, has been very successful, very deliberate, very smart, very wise in how they position themselves and do things in the safest way possible. This hybrid of dev team and community, with the elected councils serving as translators as well as circuit breakers, like you said, in the middle, kind of a wall in between them where they say this is going to work or this is not going to work. I could not agree more that this is an absolutely genius structure. Just genius.
And I think, Knox, it's important to maintain the tether, if I could use a crypto reference, a tether to the DAA dev team, right? Because they are the ones with the keys to creating a lot of extra value, right? You look at this degenerate trash panda drop, and the branding and all the other things that they do. I personally don't think that and I don't think that this will happen, but that the community should branch too far away from that. You always have like a guidance from the team about what they do, and as you say, people will serve in the middle as translators to help communication be much better than it has been in the past, but it's really getting great today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess tell me, like, it sounds like that's pretty exciting how there's a shift to get more people involved with the DAO. There's obviously, we know what's coming up from the dev team's perspective with the trash pandas. I want to talk about merch for 1 second. When I look at the Degen, like the actual Degen Apes, the pics themselves, there are some articles in there, particularly the red hoodie. I've been very outspoken about this, that out of all the attributes in the entire attribute pool, the red hoodie is the one thing that I like gravitate to and say, I'll wear that in public. It's red, it catches attention, but it's also got a very clean brand logo on it. Is there any intention to bring some of this to life?
Oh, so the one thing about Monolith's art, I mean, people give him a lot of praise all the time, and if he's listening to this, it's almost too much praise, Mono. So can't cool your jets. But one of the good things about his art is that there's a strong attention to detail, and I will say to you that there is a reason why the merch appears the way that it does in the Degen Apes, right? In actual fact, I think if you go hunt for a tweet from Austin Federa, if you search through his media in Twitter, I think you might actually find that red hoodie in real life.
Okay. I'm going to go do that.
You should go do that. And look, I don't have any sort of, I guess, inside info on when the merch will drop, but suffice to say, merch is definitely part of what the dev team have. I think they've started working on it, or they have worked on it for a while, but obviously their focus has been sort of definitely on this drop and delivering value on the trash pandas for now. But the merch is definitely there.
So outside of that, what else is coming next? Can you share anything?
Yeah, look, I think the most exciting thing is going to be the Degen Trash Panda initiatives, the blockchain game, what we're doing in the community, shifting across to the more of the DAO structure, and that's still a work in progress, Knox. So it's not like it's all done deal, right? Like we have to sort of consult with the community and get feedback, and then agree on what we can do, and then hopefully some merch. Now there's been talk of a meetup as the world opens up, but I probably say that I don't think there's any concrete plans for that. But I certainly would love to see that at some point. I do know there are a couple of Degen Apes lurking in my neck of the woods, and so I might hunt them down before an official event is there. But that's maybe one thing in the bit of the further future to get to.
Okay, I think that's going to be a big deal. I think that's going to be a really big deal. Okay. So we're going on an hour at this point. Tell me, I think before we wrap this up, is there anything else that you'd like to say or sum this thing up with?
No, look, I think I can't believe we've actually spoken in an hour. I mean, look, I think I would love to chat with you in future about some of the wider ecosystem as well, because I think we share a lot of similar views and very similar passions about this place. I mean, what I will probably wrap this all up with is that the Solana ecosystem is amazing. The community that I was able to latch onto and find and discover, I never in a million years thought that I would be able to. I couldn't talk to people in my real life, right? And suddenly I was making connections, and now I actually feel proud to talk to people about it in real life, to say, hey, look, this is what we're doing, right? And onboard people into it, and that onboarding only comes with a range of diverse and really good projects that people can vibe with. Some people will vibe with different kinds of projects, but as long as they're quality ones, where the teams build, where they try to do the right thing, where they don't raise an obscene amount of Solana and then sort of just disappear, right? Which there's probably like a million of those out there, and I know some of us invested in those before. But if we can clean up that ecosystem, like to support people, right? then I think we will onboard the next, 10, 20, 100 million people. And it starts with these key blue chip projects, Degen Ape Academy, Solana Monkey Business, Thugbirds, Galactic Geckos, Solsteads. It starts with these projects.
Yep. I've been on this kick very recently in the previous run through the ecosystem where we're seeing a lot of like meme projects and meme coins, returning extraordinary returns, but at the end of the day, all they are is just pump and dumps, at least in my opinion. And it's a little disturbing when I saw a few very high quality projects launch over the weekend and didn't sell out. And I'm like, I think these projects are going to be around 1 year from now, offering extraordinary utility and adventure to their holders. So I think there's huge opportunity there.
I think you're right. I mean, two things, right? Number one, people love it when things like meme coins make the money, right? We've seen it with GameStop, we've seen it with Doge, we've seen it with Shiba. But I agree with you. Like, what happened to all of those after they ran out of steam? They just dumped, right? There's no utility, right? It's just sort of momentum trading almost. So that's taken the steam away from the NFT space. And then also the fact that everyone's positioning for a huge fourth quarter run in crypto. And you see also Solana price running. Right. So those two things, I think, are part of the reason why you've seen those things be unable to sell out. The third one is probably mint fatigue, because there's so many things out there. But what I will say, and actually, maybe this is something that I should have brought up earlier. This is a project that I was just completely taken with, was Goblin Laboratory. Right. And the reason why I bring this up is because it's a project that's sort of very innovative. Right, the art's amazing. Zach, the artist, had built it over 10 years of his work. And when you put your NFT, you don't just get an NFT. You've got to put it together, right? You've got components, and they come together, and you can keep chopping and changing it. I mean, it's just such a great and brilliant and interactive idea. But even that might struggle to find. If you launch in the wrong conditions, something of that quality is going to suffer. Something even that will probably be around for a year and provide utility over time, it's going to suffer for now. But the thing is, this market moves way too fast. People shouldn't draw too many conclusions too quickly, right? And if you back the right teams that build, and you've got to do your research, right? You've got to get into Discords, you've got to talk to people, you've got to buy a Degen Ape, come to Mint Squad and ask us, then you will find the right ones to back.
I couldn't agree more, my friend. Look, this has been an amazing conversation, and I cannot wait to sit down with you again and continue this conversation, not only about Degen Apes, but also about the ecosystem in general. It's always a thrill to sit down with someone who's as passionate about things as you are. And, because we're so early, and because there's my neighbor across the street doesn't know about this stuff, having these conversations is really important. That's why I think the meetups are also really important. It's really important to be surrounded by people who feel the same way about you, and shake their hand and share a beer.
Absolutely.
And talk about Degen lifestyle and wear the same hoodie. So it's been good, man. I really appreciate your time, and I really appreciate the effort that you're putting into not only the Degen Apes, but also the Solana ecosystem in general. You bring real value to the people, and at some point, because we're so early, everybody's going to barrel in and recognize you and what you've done, and thank you.
Knox, that's really high praise. I really thank you for saying that. I mean, like, that stuff like this is what keeps me going. I love doing it. And, if it gets the next 10, 20, 30, 50 people to be just as passionate and build our ecosystem, then it's all worth it.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap up there. Again, I can't thank you enough. We will be talking to you again soon.
Awesome. Great to chat, Knox. Thank you.
Yes.